Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis. This is an extra edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast where we're talking about the Major League Baseball draft. Today is draft day. There's going to be Ole Miss names that are read. There are going to be Ole Miss prospects that are taken. We'll see exactly how that goes. I'm joined by Derek Vandygriff, and we are honestly going to get to the bottom of it. How you doing, Derek?
Good, man. How you doing?
Man, I'm just absolutely peachy. We are finally to the Major League Baseball draft, and media days is a little over a week from today for football. So we've got like this really dead time where there's not a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, but it's going to start picking up storylines sometime in the next week or so.
Yeah, and obviously a big day for you too. You've been looking forward to the Major League Draft as a lifelong Tigers fan, with them sitting there at number 3 for a while now. Sitting there looking at all the mock drafts, trying to see if a certain outfielder from Baton Rouge might slide to you or not. So big day for you and your Tigers.
Yeah, and we can go ahead and get into that. It's been what Langford predicted to the Tigers for months, and people were just assuming it was going to be him. And honestly, to be real about it, we're excited. I just hope they put him in Lakeland so I can go watch him play. But the Pirates are doing some weird stuff, and the rumor is that he wants over slot at number 1. Dylan Cruz did, so the Pirates just kind of moved on from there, and they may take Wyatt Langford, they may take a high school bat, they may take Paul Skeens. But if they take a high school bat, we're talking about how that draft is just amazingly going to start off crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, the Detroit Tigers need to have a parade.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it would be nuts if they ended up taking that kid out of high school, number 1 overall there, because this is kind of different in the draft is the fact you got 3 guys at the top, Cruz and Langford and Skeens, that they're not going to spend a whole lot of time in the minors. They're almost major league ready coming out of college, and they're obviously all 3 really, really good players too. So if the Pirates end up doing Pirate things and passing on Cruz or any of the other 2 for that matter, then the Tigers will have their pick of any of those 3, or 2 of the 3, whoever ends up sliding to you, and there's going to be a team right there at number 4 that's going to be pretty excited about it too. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But if I'm the Pirates, I'm not overthinking it. I'm not sitting there counting my pennies. I'm taking Dylan Cruz and I'm moving on.
Yeah, because if Dylan Cruz falls down to number 3 in the Tigers, he is going to be a center fielder in Major League Baseball, which means Riley Green is going to move to a corner outfield slot. And their lineup flexibility is just going to start getting off the charts. It's a chance to build absolutely relatively quickly. But let's talk about the Ole Miss Rebels, because this is an Ole Miss show. Jacob Gonzalez, I looked on The Athletic this morning. He is mocked to the Minnesota Twins at 5. I've seen him at 10. But it looks like somewhere between 5 and 15 is the expectation for Jacob Gonzalez.
Yeah, I've been seeing the same thing. I saw another one where they had him mocked at 10 to the Marlins. There's some talk about the Marlins really liking him. So whoever ends up getting Jacob's getting a obviously really athletic shortstop who really improved his defense his last year in Oxford this past year. Really cleaned up the errors, and he's a left-handed bat that doesn't chase pitches. He's got a real good feel for the strike zone. He's a patient hitter, and he's got enough pop to get it over the wall too, and that's only going to increase as he gets older and more experienced in the minor leagues too. So whoever ends up with him is going to end up drafting, I think, an everyday major league shortstop. You can move him over to third base even if you needed to, if you had a log jam there. Talking about the Twins, for example, they got Carlos Correa there right now on that big contract. And, if Jacob ends up performing well and is ready in the next 2 or 3 years and Correa's still there, well, you can just move one of those to third base. And, he's got one heck of a left side of the infield there in Minnesota. So whoever ends up with him can be really happy. He's one of those guys that I have no doubt is going to end up in the majors in a few years. We're really excited for Jacob, and, just glad I got to see him in Oxford. He was one of the Rebel greats. He's one of the best to ever do it, and obviously won us a ring, and he was a real big part of it.
And we're also seeing other Ole Miss players, but also I want to bring this up before I forget about it. We're entering trade month, basically. The deadline's a month away. And somebody like Gray Kessinger
Yeah.
might be a part of a deal like, let's for instance say, and I'm just going to use the Tigers because I'm a lifelong Tigers fan. Let's say the Astros trade for Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And the start, but it's somebody like Gray Kessinger could end up a part of that deal, and that'll be a way that they fill out their roster because that's a young shortstop on the field for the Astros now. So this is almost like a marketing piece for the Astros, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is. I think because you got Brakeman over at third and Pena at shortstop. So they're pretty set on the left side of the infield. But Gray's kind of forced their hand over the last couple of years. Last year in particular, played really good in the minors and carried it over into this year. And they had Pena go down, so they had a need there at shortstop. They called him up, and they're kind of playing him a little bit everywhere in the infield right now. So he's a versatile guy. He's showing he can hit. Which we all knew that, and his glove second to none. We saw that for 3 years in Oxford. He may be the best defensive shortstop I ever seen come through Oxford, Mississippi. So, I think that's absolutely what's going on. He's definitely a candidate to be moved if the Astros want to go add some pieces and make another run at it this year.
Yeah, and the Tigers, by the way, they have six starting pitchers called up right now. And the reason that is during the month of July, Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Lorenzen, who is the Tigers All-Star selection, by the way, as well, they are they are both being basically put in the shop window for the trade deadline. Because with Tariq Skubal coming back and other players coming back, you can see the rotation, the way it's going to form, and you can also see how they're going to use these pieces to build other areas of the roster. And I know this isn't a Tigers podcast, but I like talking baseball with you, man.
Well, yeah. You can throw Matt Manning into that same category too. As a guy that's coming back just like Tariq Skubal is, and they're out there. They're trying to show what pieces they have because they're not in win mode right now. But if you can keep selling off these veterans that are having good years, accumulating assets and prospect stuff like that, gets up for the future. And Tigers are one of those that have all these prospects that are going to start making their major league debuts, and it's going to end up being a problem, especially if Dylan Cruz flies at number 3.
Yeah, and don't forget Colt Keith also is in AAA right now, just knocking the cover off the ball.
Yeah,
And they definitely have some prospects. So maybe I did pick the right team, even though this is a team that's won like 60 games for 5 years in a row. Maybe I actually made an informed decision on this. Now, all right, let's change the subject now that we've talked about that. In the Major League Baseball draft, what are the prospects that we need to look at as potential players coming off the board early that could be a loss for Ole Miss Baseball?
As far as our recruiting class goes, we're going to lose our top 2 pitchers, it sounds like. Doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of optimism that Xander Muth or Josh Noth end up making it to campus, which is really unfortunate. Guys with some really good fastballs running up 97, 98 miles an hour already as 18-year-old. So obviously would have loved to have gotten at least one of those guys to campus, but doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. One we need to keep an eye on right now is Cooper Pratt, the shortstop. He's actually from Oxford, but he's playing at Magnolia Heights this year. We have a hole at shortstop. I know we brought in the kid from Division II Tampa, but if we don't get Cooper Pratt, that's basically our only shortstop on the roster, which is a problem. So Cooper Pratt's a very highly regarded prospect. He's the number 29 player in the entire country, obviously number 1 player in Mississippi. So that's one we need to keep an eye on. It sounds like it's maybe 50-50 at best for the Rebels, but there is still a shot that if his number's not met, that he ends up making it to campus. And, in this new era of NIL and all that, we can make that decision a little harder for him. We're not going to give him, obviously, first round money from the MLB draft. But if you can throw a little NIL his way, make the decision a little bit harder, kind of gives him a little bit more leverage with these MLB teams to meet his number, or he can come in and take over that shortstop role from day one. And, it'd be nice to see him for the next 3 years in Oxford. So that's the one to keep an eye on. Campbell Smithwick out of Oxford, the catcher. He's a draft guy for sure, but it sounds like he's almost assuredly going to make it on campus. Doesn't sound like he's going to end up signing in the draft. So obviously we have a need at catcher too. So that's obviously a big one for Mike and the boys. And if you're a catcher, why wouldn't you want to play at Ole Miss? That's one of the positions that you're going to come in and you're going to play for 3 years, and then you're going to get selected in the top 5 rounds of the draft. That's just what we do. So you look at the history we've had at catcher. I'm sure that goes a long way with some of these guys and some of these top catcher prospects when it comes to the major league draft coming out of high school. So really, Pratt's the one you need to look for. We're going to lose the 2 arms, sounds like, and Campbell Smithwick sounds like he's going to make it to campus. So sounds like we'll end up getting at least 1, hopefully 2 of our top 4 out of this big recruiting class that we have.
Okay, the big 3 gets a lot of pub, as they should: Skeens, Langford, and Cruz. And the first round players like Jacob Gonzalez and all that you mentioned. There's a kid actually from Strawberry Crest High School in Florida that I drive by every time I go by the camp to Tampa. And you just look at the baseball field, and I've driven by that multiple times. Like, man, for Florida, that place has a little bit of work to do on their facilities, but apparently they have a top 10 prospect playing shortstop at the moment. But looking at the second round, right? We all talk about that. Like, Kemp Alderman is mocked somewhere between like 40, 45, 50, somewhere in there. And he just tore the cover off the ball at the combine. But who are some other players, not necessarily Ole Miss, but just some other players in college baseball that we might need to pay attention to as a second round type pick?
Well, I'm not sure he'll end up making it to the second round, but Hurston Waldrop from Florida, the starting pitcher, came from Southern Miss. I've seen him mocked anywhere from the mid to late first into the second round. He's obviously a really good pitcher. Ole Miss has seen him for the last couple of years, both at Southern and at Florida. So that's one kid that I think can really jump up and be a player in that late first, early second round range from the SEC. This conference is just so loaded with dudes top to bottom. LSU, Trey Morgan, I think he's draft eligible this year, if I'm not mistaken. I absolutely love his game. And with the MLB draft, they put such an emphasis on defense. And he's such a good defensive first baseman with a lot of pop from the left-hand side, too. So that's probably a guy that I could see getting drafted in that second, third round range, something like that, and really be able to make an impact with the major league team because of the pop from the left-hand side and how good he is at first base. We all saw that incredible play made in the national championship game against Florida to send that game to extra innings and cut down that runner at home, right? And the way he stretches around the bag, too, like you don't even have to get it that close to the bag for him to be able to scoop out of dirt. So he contorts his body and his legs, and his footwork is so good that, he's really one of the better first basemen that I've seen defensively over there. So I think that's another guy that can really make an impact outside of the first round from the SEC.
Yeah, and if you look at it, once we get to Wednesday after the All-Star game and everything, we will be officially in Jack Caglione 1-1 season.
Yeah. He's obviously incredible too. He's probably going to end up being the number 1 guy, the Friday guy for Florida next year, and he's going to be out there and be your Friday night ace, and then hit 30 to 35 bombs to go with it. So I think you're going to hear a lot of 1-1 buzz for him next year.
Yeah, especially since they like to compare him to Ohtani. And I don't know if you can actually compare him to Ohtani.
You can.
But, yeah, it's like, hey, this guy's the best player potentially in the history of baseball. Let's compare this college kid to him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he is that type situation. But he is a left-hander that can get it up to 99. He can hit some bombs. He needs to probably work on a little bit of his average, and he needs to work on his control because, as we saw in that College World Series, he was wild as heck.
Yeah, and in particular his secondary stuff, right? I mean, you can be a little wild with the fastball and get away with it, but your off-speed and secondary pitches, you need to be able to hit your spots with them. Those are the ones you're either trying to get them to chase or you're trying to start it somewhere out of the zone and get it to break back in or drop back in to catch them off guard. So that's where he really needs to improve, in my opinion.
Yeah, this will probably be the last time we talk about college baseball for a little while in the program. So let's go ahead and get into this a little bit. Yeah. Tell me what I need to look forward to going into the fall ball and all that with Ole Miss baseball moving forward.
Well, yeah, right now you need, we need to finalize a roster, right? I mean, that's kind of the big part right now. We got to get past the draft, get past the signings, and see who all's actually going to make it to campus. You know, are we going to end up being able to bring back Ethan Groff and Xavier Rivas? Or are they going to end up signing a pro contract? You know, that's again with the NIL era. That's something that you have the option of doing. You know, last year we went and got Nick Pogue out of the transfer portal from Florida, and all of a sudden he signs a non-drafted free agent deal with the Phillies, I think it was, and he never made it to campus. So those are the kind of things that, you know, if you're going to be a big-time program, which Ole Miss is, you can't allow those kind of things to happen. So, you know, if Rivas and Groff, if they're either undrafted or drafted late and not going to make a lot of money, that's where we need to step up and bring those two guys back, because that would obviously be a huge boost to get Rivas back. He was so good in his first year in the SEC. You know, he's probably our best starter, quite frankly. But if you can get him back to go with Quinn and Saunier, you know, you would assume they're going to take sizable jumps freshman to sophomore year. Quinn was obviously really good as a freshman. Saunier struggled, but, you know, from a pedigree standpoint and a stuff standpoint, he's probably got the best arm on the roster. And, you know, with the history of Mike Bianco and these guys, they always get the most out of these pitchers year to year. So you got, I look for Groff and Rivas post draft, see if we can get them back. Same with Ethan Leger. I think it'd be big if we got him back too. You know, kept him out of pro ball, put him at second base and let him go. But then the development of Saunier, Quinn, and even guys like Sam Takulian, you know, Josh Mallets and Riley, how they come back from their Tommy John surgeries. You know, we saw a little bit of Maddox last year, didn't look quite right, but, you know, that was kind of expected as long as he'd been off. So, and then, of course, you've got Hunter Elliott. You know, how good is he going to be next year? You know, what do you have there, the post-surgery and all that? Is he going to be able to be the Friday night ace, and how quickly can he get back to? Is it something we've got to work him back into in the non-conference to get him ready for SEC play? Or is he one of those super healers that, you know, he can just get right back out there after fall ball and, you know, ramping up for the season? He's just ready to go again. So obviously a lot of storylines there. And then you got guys like Furness, Udemark, and Kramer. Kramer's one I'm actually really excited about this year. I think him and Furness are going to be the two big bats in the middle of that lineup. And then just how we fill it out from there. You know, we've got all these other transfers in. Fisher at third's obviously a big one for us, but just see who all we get out of the portal, who we get to campus out of this recruiting class. We actually got a big lefty that's going to make it to campus. He was number 91 player in the country from down there in Tampa, Wesley Mendez. So that's something we need. We need a left-handed arm in there. So, you know, those are all things to look forward to. We have the potential, I think, to be really, really good, but things have to break our way. Some of these freshmen need to grow up and, you know, take those jumps from freshman to sophomore year, and then see what we can get out of some of these newcomers.
Yes, and before we get out of here, Tim Elko, I think he's in high A now since the last time we talked. He did get the bump up a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit though. He's still crushing people down there.
Yeah. I genuinely feel bad for the pitchers at that level. Going against people that are that advanced. I mean, Elko's just killing the ball right now. Anyway, thanks everybody for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast their first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Every dayers. Tomorrow we will be back in our game preview mode. We'll be talking, I think, about the Arkansas Razorbacks. I think that's the next game on the schedule. But tune in for that. This time, a week from tomorrow, you will have SEC Media Days kind of on the news and in the forefront, so we can get ready for all the news stories and figure out exactly how we're going to cover that. Anyway, thank you, Derek, for stopping by and dropping a little Major League Baseball and Ole Miss baseball knowledge on us. And we will see you a little bit later, buddy.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it. Hi, Toddy.
Howdy, Toddy.